So this is going to be an interesting class. I've thought long and hard about it. It's kind of like teaching someone how to make something up, and that's impossible. So I think a lot of this class is going to be brainstorming off of the outline. Now you all have the outline that I sent you, and it's 2 pages of a lot of subjects. All of these subjects aren't composing. All of these subjects are simply arrows pointing you in the direction of how to create your own songs and melodies. But the actual sit down part and coming up with ideas is going to be on you guys, and I'm hoping that during each of our next lesson with all of y'all, we'll be able to look at some ideas that you came up with, and toward the end of this class, I'll give you some pointers on how to do that. But a lot of this comes down to just believing you can do it. Everyone told Beethoven he couldn't be a composer because he was deaf, but he didn't listen. Had to wait on that one. You got to believe in yourself. That's the point here. So starting with the outline, item 1 was something I thought about because, first of all, we kind of have to dispel the notion of what a lot of us think composing is. And it has to do with that image of the quill pen and the poofy hair and the candlelight and writing scores into the late of night like Bach. When actually, there's a method that I have termed folk composing, which is when you sit around a campfire or you're sitting outside your RV or wherever you're in a relaxed state of mind, and if you've got your instrument, whether it's like, you know, a musical instrument or a banjo, you've got your device on you, and you get into a state of sort of noodling around. And that's what I call the folk composing process. So that's going to be the template for all of this, even though we're going through a lot of theory and I'm giving you some tools to help you create melodies. The bottom line here is it's folk composing. You can write it down if you wish, but I recommend that whenever you come up with something fun, you always have your phone handy with a recording app, and you get in the habit of recording everything you think might be kind of neat. You catch everything. You can always delete. That's the slogan. You can always delete. You can't record something that has left the coop and it's too late to record it. So you always be ready to record. Now, that's why in item 2 I say the instrument is your pen versus the paper. So I can write tab or notation and compose because I was trained classically. For example, if I was to do something like, let me do a quick screen share and show you some music. So let's say I'm composing in the classical sense. I'm just picking notes that I think kind of sound good, right? This won't be a masterpiece probably, but the typical composition approach is a lot of using the visuals of the note and the way the staff is created to see the up and down flow. So now I've created this somewhat juvenile melody. Now, I'm not super proud of that, but the point here is, as much as you want to use paper to write stuff down, if I was sitting down and had the same thought process with my instrument of choice, banjo, guitar, ukulele, you name it, now I see between every note I did on that paper, I see I could go 1 fret higher, 1 fret lower. I see I could maybe just do the same thing on a new string. All of a sudden, your instrument will give you a bird's eye view on all the different notes you have available to you. So that's why item 2 I call the instrument is your pen. It is your composing tool. Now, let's talk about the elements of a tune. Before we come up with a tune, it's handy often to know what elements are involved. Basically, there's 3. Under item 3, A, B, and C, melody, chords, and structure. So the reason this is important to know, because different people like to start with different elements when they're writing tunes. Some people like to start with chords. They'll sit around and make up a chord progression. G, B flat, C, back to B flat. Anyone can come up with that. Just kind of moving your finger around and coming up with a little riff. So if that was my beginning of my compositional process, then I would record that, and while that was going on, I would try to pick out some notes that match that, like this, baby. Once Once again, I'm keeping this very remedial so it's not intimidating. I'm not making it too Mozart-esque right now, but you can see the process. Melody is what we're going to be focusing on because that's what most of us use when we're composing. Structure, item C. Almost all tunes we're going to be dealing with, Celtic, country, bluegrass, even jazz, have kind of a binary structure. A is the first part, B is the second part. So the two common structures we'll be writing in are called AABB, meaning you do a first part twice and a second part twice. And then we have the more jazz form called AABA, where we'll play the first part twice, then play a chorus, and then come back to the first part. So those are the two structures we'll be using today in our class. Now let's talk about item 4, the two paths of composing. As I mentioned earlier, some people hear chords, some people hear melodies. That's the harmonic and the melodic paths. Let's discuss item 4A, the melodic composing or melody-based. Before you can find notes, it helps to know where those notes live, where they come from. And at least in Western society and most of music on the globe, notes come from a framework we call scales. So if you know the scales on your instrument first, you're going to have a lot easier time noodling around and picking up notes. Let's assume I never learned a scale. And all I know is there's a lot of frets on this instrument, right? Unless you're playing a violin, then you'll fret less than the rest of us. Okay, so if I don't have a scale, when I'm noodling around, let's see, a lot of the time I'm just trying to find notes that sound good. So the problem if you don't know the scales on your instrument, your compositional, your creative process will be hijacked by the effort it will take to find good sounding notes. If you know the scale, now I have a G scale. Watch this. Okay, most melodies are going to be found in that scale. I have some of you students who are learning scales on their instrument, and you've actually said to me when you're practicing your scale, every now and then, a little melody will just kind of erupt. That's because the scale has all the notes you need. And we're going to discuss different kinds of scales in a minute. First, let's make sure that you understand the importance of learning several scales that you have a template to work from, okay? So let's look at some common, under item 4A, number 2, common melodies and their scale sources. Now, we're going to get into different styles of scales here, and I'm going to make sure you know the 5 primary scales that you'll need to write music with. But for now, what I want to talk about is examples. So let's say Coming Around the Mountain, When She Comes. That has literally all the notes of the major scale, just kind of rearranged. That's a great example of how a lot of the more happy, folksy sounding melodies come from the major scale, okay? So go ahead and write down these scales as we discuss them. And this will be touched on again in item 5A. The scales, the 5 scales you will need for composing: major, minor, pentatonic minor, and mixolydian, okay? There are more scales than that out there, my friends. There's more scales in the music we play than on a 1,000-pound marlin. But these are the ones that happen the most in all of my research and all of my years of jamming. So now let's look at item 2 under 4, Shady Grove, classic folk song. Listen to this one. Mournful, dark sounding. That's a classic example of the minor scale, in that case A minor, being used to create a melody. So right away, if you know your major scales and your minor scales, you've got 2 very large playgrounds for creating melodies. Now, those of you who study with me know I like to use the trick of combining those and using your major scale / relative minor to get those. So that's something that's handy to memorize as well. And that's the relative minors. If you haven't memorized that, take a note to bring that up with me at your next class and memorize the relationships between, for example, G and E minor, same scale, C and A minor, same scale, and so on and so forth, okay? But that's more of a theory angle. Now, let's look at item 3 under 4, Cripple Creek, item 3. So this would be an example of a pentatonic scale. Let me describe that very briefly. If you take a major scale and you remove the 4th and the 7th degree of that scale, you get a real happy, vanilla, carefree sounding scale that has literally no bad notes. It's been, as the kids say, nerfed. It's been made safe. So here's your G major scale. Now watch me count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I'm going to count and remove 4 and 7. 1, 2, 3, skip 4, 5, 6, skip 7, 1. And this is the new animal. It's real kind of like laid back, very unconcerned. The major scale has more pathos with those 4s and 7s. So you take a melody like Cripple Creek. Pure pentatonic, no 4s and 7s, very folksy. Now we have item 4 under 4, Man of Constant Sorrow. I'm sure you've all seen the movie. Great movie that came from Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Lately, as I enter middle age, I've thought my slogan should be, Oh Brother, Where Am I? But that might be another movie down the road. Man of Constant Sorrow. Here we go. Let me play the melody for you. Beautiful example of the minor pentatonic scale, okay? Might want to write this down. Minor scale minus 2 and 6. That's your minor pentatonic. Very useful scale to know. Very useful. Found in all kinds of Appalachian music, Celtic tunes, great for composing, okay? So now we have finally an example of a scale we call the Mixolydian. Those of you who have been through my torturous theory lessons will know that the Mixolydian is actually a mode, not properly a scale, but we're considering it a scale in this instance. The Mixolydian equals major scale with flat 7. That's a great formula to write down. All you have to do is take your major scale, and when you hit that 7th degree, pull her down 1 fret, and you have this really delightful bluesy but not too bluesy sound. Check this out. Here's G major. Now I'm going to flat the 7. Watch what happens. It's sort of bluesy, but not super bluesy because it's still got the major 3rd in there. So like a melody like Old Joe Clark. Classic Mixolydian because it's got that major 3rd, but still that flat 7. Very useful composing tool. If you are familiar on your instrument with the major scale, the minor scale, the major and minor pentatonic scales, and the Mixolydian scale, you can compose in a number of moods and flavors. It's an extremely powerful collection of scales, okay? So now let's talk about item 3 under 4 at the bottom. I talk about jump starting your melodies with backing tracks, and we're going to postpone that till I get to item 6. I just saw that I put that in there. Look at B, harmonic composing. Now we're talking about, some of you may like to sit around and strum chords more than playing scales, and that's perfectly fine. That's the other half of you composers out there, okay? There's 3 of you out there. Those who use notes, those who use chords, and then those who are decomposing like fuck. Now, let's try some examples of how we get started with this. Chord families. Once again, if you don't know a scale, you're going to spend all this time trying to avoid icky sounding notes. If you don't know your chord families, you'll play G and then go, where should I go? A, G. You're going to spend too much time trying to figure out what chords sound good together. When if you learn your chord families, that's a foregone conclusion. So the chord families are knowing the primary and the secondary chords in any key, okay? So let me give you an example. Write this example down. Chord family in G. Under that, write primaries equals G, C, D. Under that, write secondaries equals AM, BM, EM, and F sharp diminished or DIM. We'll explain that to you at our private lessons, what that means. So that means if you are aware of the fact that when you're in G, the primary or most common movements in music are going to be G, C, and D. You all know this already. Now, if you know your secondaries, you have more colors in your paint set. So now we can play G, maybe A minor. And then maybe I'll go back to a primary of C and G. Hey, guess who came on to that chord progression a while ago and wrote a classic song? Bob Dylan, okay? So these are examples of how the most famous composers and songwriters at some point were sitting around with their feet kicked up and a drink of choice, going from chord to chord, and all of a sudden they went, ooh, G, A minor to C is really cool. But because they knew secondaries and primaries. If you just know the primary chords, you're going to have kind of blocky, clunky sounding chord progressions eventually, okay? So the chord families is depicted in a chart that I have on, if you go to the resources page, go down to charts, there's a chart about all the chord families in all keys, and you may want to print that out. Now, common chord progressions. This is a great way to start. They're like cliches. Let me write down a couple of cliches for you. Let's say chord cliche 1 will be G, C, G, D. Super common, 1, 4, 1, 5, okay? Just primary chords. Now let's do a chord progression that uses primary and secondaries and get a little more risky. Write this down. G, E, M, A, M, D. Classic 1, 6, 2, 5. Watch this. Every 50s song that was ever written. But there's a reason for that, because it's a very handy sound to create melodies over. So here's a fun little assignment for you. At some point today or over the weekend, I want you to record that progression, which is G, E minor, A minor, D. Record yourself playing that like 8 times, okay? And then play it back and noodle around with a G scale. You'll surprise yourself what comes out. It's really amazing. That progression is really conducive to creating melodies. That's why it's so part of our culture. It's in so many songs, okay? Now, that's what I call the strum and hum or record and play. Item 3 under B, under 4, strum and hum, record and play. That means the way you can jumpstart your creative juices when you want to get going on this is strum a chord progression and hum along. Do it when no one's around, because people tend to give us funny looks when we're doing this. Sometimes you can sound very strange when you're doing this. But part of composing is being fearless and understanding that there's a whole lot of bad notes you got to get out of your system before you get to the good ones. So let me give you an example of strum and hum, the composing method. If I'm going to play E minor, D, all of a sudden I'm humming them along. Watch what happens. Normally when I hum, or most of us when we hum, or even da-da-do-do or scat, you can find the note that you're, the primary note, the key. Ooh, I like that. See, now that's what I love to do. That's the process of songwriting. If you get a chord progression and you allow yourself to noodle along vocally, for some reason, the voice is often more intuitive in finding melodies than the instrument, okay? Then, record and play. It's all about record and play. Play along. So anytime you do this and you get something you like, please record it, because I'm going to want to hear this stuff in our lessons, okay? We're going to discuss this. I'm going to call you on that. Now, item 5. What you need for composing, the theory that you need. Here's the boiled down theory that we need to be composers. Number 1, the 5 scales. You know what those are now. And it's here in case you took notes that you can't read. Major, minor, natural minor, pentatonic, and mixolydian. That's the 5 scales we'll be using. Now, on page 2, item B, elements of a melody. This is very interesting, because when I'm improvising, when all of us are sitting around in a jam and we're improvising, we're making stuff up off the top of our head, guess what we're doing? That's instant composing. We're composing on the fly. The only difference between improvisation and composition is composers are improvising, but they have all the time in the world to pick their next note. Improvisers are composing, well, we don't have very much time at all to pick our next note. We have nanoseconds. So there's a very interesting and important relationship between learning to improvise and composing. They're the same process. The time is different. The timing is different. So the reason I brought that up is when I teach improvisation, I talk about something I call the 3 R's. And this is how to take your scale. Once again, I'm using G as an example. Okay, now the 3 R's are rests, repeats, and rhythms. So we're adding silence with the rests, we're adding repeated notes with the second R, and the third R, rhythms. We're making sure we vary the rhythm of our notes, long notes, short notes, fast, slow, 3s, 4s. We're mixing up the rhythms, and we don't get stuck in this marchy sound, okay? So let me demonstrate what the 3 R's do to a scale. It's pretty much like taking a hammer to a glass vase. It's amazing. Here's your G scale. Now watch this. Rest, rest. Rest, rest, rest. Rest, rest. That's the first R, adding rest. Now repeats. 3 notes. 1 note. 3, 4 notes. Rest, 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 rest. A melody just happened right there. Watch this. Repeat. Rest, rest, rest. A melody just was created out of thin air. This is the magic. When you add the 3 R's to the scale, you start to get melodies. The last R is a little harder to understand because if you have a metronome going or a backing track, you know, I'm always saying get your backing tracks before you do anything. There's the backing track, right? Watch how I vary the rhythm over that beat. Here's literally playing the beat. Here's playing a rhythm of twice per beat, or 8 notes if you want to be technical. How about 4 times per beat, or 16 notes? Okay, how about 3 over the beat? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. How about a bouncy rhythm over the beat? Those are all elements of the 3rd R, which are always be seeking different rhythms when you're practicing your scales, okay? Now let's apply that to composition. What you'll do is you'll sit down, you'll get any kind of backing track, probably one of the ones I'm gonna send you. By the way, at the end of this class, I have a wonderful collection of backing tracks that some of you have used before, as Dennis has, and we're gonna be talking about that later at the class. You want to put on a backing track, pick the right scale. Let's say you had a backing track in G. Imagine that's still going, okay? And then you're going to play your scale and add the 3 R's. Watch what magic happens. Repeating, rest. Repeats, different rhythm. You will literally surprise yourself. 3 R's will keep you from getting stuck in the trap that is ascending and descending scales. Okay? Scales are just notes in a box. They're not going to do you any good in a box until you smash that box with the 3 R's and a musical backing track, and your compositional process starts to happen. Okay. Now, let's talk about phrases. Under item B on page 2, section 2 is phrases. One of the great things about rests is they create commas or periods in our musical speech, and they make it sound like we're saying sentences. The French composer Claude Debussy had a quote that I'm fond of quoting, which was, "Music is the silence between the notes." Think about that. The good musicians start with a canvas of silence. Now, I'm not among the best improvisers, but some of my teachers, yes, I take lessons, are trying to get me to think of silence first when I'm improvising. Let's say I've got a backing track. Here's my improvisation using silence as my canvas. A lot of silence. 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 So every statement I made was more dramatic because of all the silence in between. Otherwise, it would just be a bunch of notes. Now, so a musical phrase is something when you play something that you go, that sounds cool, and then you pause. You have to put a rest in. So that's one thing I want you thinking when you're noodling along with your major scales or whatever scale, the backing tracks, make sure you're going and stopping and going and stopping. That's creating phrases. Otherwise, it's just one long stream of notes that becomes toxic to the creative process, okay? Now, item 3 under B on page 2, creating melodies that match chords. This is a little more technical. I'm gonna send all of you these backing tracks that some of you have used before, and what they are examples of songs that you're gonna create melodies to. For example, Roseanne, by the way, wrote a delightful waltz that we'll be discussing in a little bit here, and you'll probably remember this backing track. It's the Waltz in D. Here we go, let's listen to it. Could most of you hear that? Probably not too loud, but you could hear it. Okay. So I'm gonna send you the chords to that as well, and this is gonna be so much fun once you start this process. You will have more fun than a monkey with a banana machine as soon as you get the chords in your head and you're playing along with this stuff. I'm telling you, it's the funnest thing in the world. So for example, that one we just did, right here, Waltz in D. So the chords go B, D, G into D, B minor, D back to A, and D. So that beautiful little like rocking chair feeling of that waltz, if you take your D major scale and you employ the 3 R's, you'll start to get melodies. Now, this item I just started to discuss is 3 under B, creating melodies that match the chords. When you start looking at the chords here, you'll probably have some questions come up, like when that B minor happens, how do I know which note to play out of my D scale? Okay, here's the answer. Number 1, the ear is king. Always use your ear first. Hey, how do you know what note to play under a B minor? Whichever one sounds good. Whichever one sounds good. So, first of all, I want you to take a note of choosing notes over a chord, right? How to find notes over a chord. Number 1, use your ear, okay? Number 2, it's gonna be the first note or the most common note. So let's say use this B minor as an example, okay? The first note in your musical scale should probably be a B note, okay? So let's say I'm playing my D scale. Here comes that B minor chord. I'll start with a B note and then go back to my scale. So you can hear when this happens. Watch this. I just kind of featured that B note under the B minor chord. That's a compositional trick. So you either use the most common notes, most of them, or the first note. Now, number 2 under that section of creating melodies that match chords says arpeggios. Great trick. All you do to make an arpeggio is find a chord on your instrument and don't strum it, but pick the notes individually. So in that case, I would find my B minor chord and pick notes individually. Any B minor chord. Watch what happens when I put that into my D scale. So I'm gonna play this first line of this key of D waltz, okay? And then when I come to the B minor chord, I'm gonna grab a B minor shape and I'm gonna pick individual notes out of that chord. And watch how nicely it works. Here's the D scale. Just noodling on my scale. Here's the B minor. Back to the D scale. Very handy trick there. Arpeggios are whenever you decide to abandon the scale, grab a chord shape and pick individual notes, okay? We're going on to item C on page 2, chord painting. So this won't happen too much right away because I'm gonna give you chord progressions to work with and I'm gonna kind of jumpstart you. But eventually, you're gonna come up with a melody. It'll happen. It'll jump on you while you're walking in the park or in the line at Safeway, and you're gonna wanna run outside and record it. Melodies will jump on you at the most random times. I've had to pull over to the side of the road and write down chord ideas on a cocktail napkin. You might ask why I had a cocktail napkin in my car. It's a different matter. But I kept track of that because if it goes away, it goes away. It's gone. If those melodies fly, they're gone. So let's say you have a melody in G that goes like this. Once again, I'm being silly on purpose and making it really simple. Halfway up, and it's dorky, but you know, I like that. Now, how do I find chords that go with that? Here we go, G, G, D, D, back to G. Or do I go G, to B minor, E minor to C? Any of those would work. First of all, you have to learn your harmonized scales. So item I under C is you want to memorize your harmonized scales. And what these are is a scale where every note of the scale is a chord. It's a magical formula. Let me show you in G. So G, the next note is A, right? That's going to be an A minor. The next note is B, G, A, B, right? So here's my harmonized scale in G. G, A minor, B is B minor, up to C, up to D, up to E minor, up to that F sharp diminished, up to G again. So I don't want to have to try to explain right now why some of those are major and why some of those are minor, but I do know it's critical that you memorize which ones are major and minor so you can write decent sounding chord progressions. Now, that little melody I wrote, when I went to that A, right, then you're going to play an A minor over that. Not an A major. That'd be like nasty. That's like putting sauerkraut on your vanilla ice cream. We want to basically make sure that we know which ones are minor and which ones are major, and memorizing your harmonized scales will do this for you. So there's a formula you can write down. It's really easy. Just write 1 through 7, okay? And then under each number, I'm going to tell you what to write. Under the 1, you're going to write big M for major. Under the 2, you're going to go write little m for minor. Under the 3 is little m. Under the 4 is big M. Under the 5 is big M. Under the 6 is little m. Under the 7 is a tiny circle. That's the symbol, internationally recognized symbol for a diminished chord, okay? And that's just a real freaky chord that we'll discuss at your private lessons, but it's the chord that occurs on the 7th degree of a scale. If someone's watching this later when it ends up on YouTube and they try to give me grief about quoting the wrong diminished, yes, I know it's a half diminished 7th to raise 6th on the major mode, okay? Email me and we'll settle that on our own. For right now, I'm keeping this sort of simple and saying it's a diminished family chord that occurs on the 7th degree of the major scale. Now, that being said, knowing the primary and secondary chords, all those little m's are called secondaries, and all those big m's are primaries. Now you have more colors to use when you're harmonizing a melody that you come up with, okay? Now, note groups and matching chords. Let's say you have a melody that has a group of notes. So let's go back to that little melody, that really cheeseball melody I wrote a minute ago. I'm going to do a screen share and show you the score. So look at this. G, G, A, B, D, D, D. Oh, look, there's 3 Ds in a row. I wonder what chord I might use. A D chord, okay? This is starting in G. Let me go ahead and put the correct key signature on there. This is starting in G, so we know that's probably going to be a G chord. So I'd probably harmonize this measure with a G chord. I'd go. And then for this measure, when it does this, I would go. Right? Now we have a C and a B and a C and a B. That could be a toss-up. That could be a C chord or a G chord or going back and forth. You know what I mean? Or if you know your secondary chords and you know an A minor has a C note in it, you could harmonize that measure with the A minor chord. It would be over this. And then we're back to G. So I would probably say this is going to be a G. It's going to be a D. And I want to get a little sassy over here. And I want to use an A minor secondary chord because I don't want to be too predictable. And then let's say actually that's going to be a D. There we go. And we're going to put an A minor over here. And then we're going to put a G back over here. So now over this silly melody, our chord progression that the other jammers would play while we're taking our solo would be. So let me kind of gnaw that and see how they go together. Very silly, very playful and childlike, but you see the principle here, how we find chords to match our notes. This is something you'll do later on when you come up with melodies and you want to share them with people and you want them to play chords for you. You'll want to have a chord progression written over your melody. Remember at the very beginning we talked about the elements of a tune, page 1, item 3, melody and chords. Those are the two primary elements of any song, at least most of the world. Now, 6 on page 2, jump-starting melodies with backing tracks. This is where I start to have fun. I didn't make this method up, but I kind of made it into a teaching method. The folk compositional process has to do with a lot of time spent on back porches with your friend on a guitar and them playing chords and you picking out little notes along with them and finding stuff that you like. That's the folk composing process. Now, if you don't have a long-suffering friend with a guitar who will put up with your random noodling all the time, then we go to backing tracks. So that the backing tracks that I'm going to send you at the conclusion of this lesson will give you some jump starts to create melodies. So let's break that down under item 6. First of all, you have to select the right scale. There's 2 elements of selecting the right scale. Is it major or is it minor? Is it a dark sounding song? Is it a happy sounding song? And then sub-flavors. If it's a minor song, but it sounds kind of like classical and mournful, it's probably a minor scale, a natural minor scale. If it sounds kind of folksy, but still dark, it's probably a pentatonic minor scale that you'll want to use, okay? If it's a major backing track, but it sounds really major and bright, major scale. If it's got even a hint of blues or that kind of, that old Joe Clark mood, mixolydian. So you're like the cook in the kitchen now. You want to find the right spice for the right dish. And it takes a lot of experimenting. You're going to pick the wrong scales and make melodies that sound really weird now and then. And then just toss those out, you know, and try it again. So selecting the right scale, item B under 6, understanding the different types of backing tracks, time signatures. Generally, there's 3 families that we find in folk and bluegrass music. It's 2/4, 3/4, 6/8 time. Now, if I was a theory teacher right now, I'd tell you what those numbers meant. Well, now I just want you to understand how they're executed in your real life. 2/4 means everything is even. And that includes like counts of 4 and 2. So it'd be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Everything is just like boom chuck, pick strum, Johnny Cash, up and down, everybody polka. It's back and forth, okay? 3/4 is that delightful waltz. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Everything's in 3s. A whole different kind of mood for composing. Waltzes are so fun to compose because when we have that rhythm, for some reason it's so lyrical when you play your scale. To me, waltzes just write themselves. They're magical, something magical about that. Then we have 6/8. Here's how I want you to think of 6/8. A very fast waltz. A leprechaun playing a waltz. It's just a fast waltz. So when we have, let me quote you the wagon wheel of Celtic jigs, the Irish washerwoman. You know, where you go to the jam and they're doing that, you go away for about 2 hours and come back and they're doing this all day long till the cows freeze over. That's a fast 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. A jig or a 6/8 is a fast waltz. So we're going to have backing tracks in each of those moods. Now, let's talk about item 2 under B6, major and minor modes. Look at this. I wrote number 1. For the major mode, you can use major, pentatonic major, or mixolydian. You have 3 options, okay? For the minor mode, you could use the minor or the pentatonic minor. You have 2 options. Those are the options for how to spice your melodies. Now, a lot of experimentation is going to happen, and some people will have different approaches. Some people like to use mixolydian more. Some people don't. That's going to be your own personal taste that you're going to discover. Now, item C, the JamAlong composing technique, noodle, solidify, record. Noodle, solidify, record. Here's what that means. You put on your backing track. You pick your scale. You plug in the 3 R's. You start noodling. Okay? Here I'm noodling. Ooh, and I get something I like. I immediately stop and I press record on whatever device is in front of me and I record that. Because that's a building block now. So how you compose your songs in the folk process is you noodle along. When you get something, you record it. Noodle, it solidifies, you record it. Eventually, you listen to those blocks, those pieces, and you can literally build your song like a jigsaw puzzle using those little chunks that you've created, those like miniature song phrases. That's why I say noodle, solidify, record. Solidify means do it like 4 or 5 times so you're sure it's a thing, okay? So if I can repeat it, that means it's ready to record. If I can create it again. Now, structure review. When you're doing this, be aware that almost all the backing tracks you will encounter, and I'm going to send you, will have 2 distinct parts. Okay, you'll have an A part and a B part. So you're actually writing 2 songs and putting it together like a sandwich. This is the thing. So you're going to be writing 2 compositions and gluing them together. Now, then we have item E, preserving your tune, writing, recording, or both. Some people write down tablature, 1st string, 2nd fret. Some people write out tablature on the lines. But I tend to be a big fan of recording because it takes all the work out of it and makes it so you can spend that same amount of time that you would writing out hand scratch and composing more song fragments for your next tune. So I highly recommend recording yourself whenever you get some noodles that you like. Final step, naming your tune. Guess what? Pets. Get your pets involved. Name your tunes after your pets. That's the primary way people name tunes. Second of all, dictionaries. Do the 2-pagers. Open the page, pick a word. Open another, pick a word. That's how most bands find their names. True story. So you got to name your tunes. I can't tell you how many students of mine have had 4 or 5 tunes and they're all just called like tune in D or tune in A. And then they forget how to bring them up in a jam session. A name is a handle on your jug. You can't bring your jug to the jam if it doesn't have a handle. You have to be able to say, hey, let's play Fido's Waltz or whatever. And they'll go, oh, that's the one you wrote. You want to have handles for these things, okay? Now, luckily I have 2 students here. Go ahead and Dennis, unmute your mic, and Roseanne, unmute your mic so we can hear both of you. And
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Dennis. And Roseanne, say hello.
Hello.
Hi, I'm so glad you guys made it. These are alumni of my composing technique. And Roseanne, would you mind if I shared your composition with the class?
No, that would be fine.
Wonderful. So I'm going to go over and do a screen share and show you what Roseanne came up with using all of these techniques. So look at this. Roseanne actually wrote this out, and it's amazing. She scored it out. Now, this is something that you don't have to do, but if you want to learn how to do this, I can teach you how to use this software. This is the score. And this, by the way, is what she came up with over our JamAlong backing track called Waltz in D. So let me play the Waltz in D for you, the backing track, just the waltz itself, and you can see what template she was working with. And then she came up with what I find is this delightful composition. I just love that. Roseanne, that is so catchy. I literally, when I first heard that, I brushed my teeth and chewed my food to that for a week. I could not get it out of my head. It's so catchy. This is the sort of thing that's a great example of using that track or any track to jumpstart what she came up with. mean, it's wonderful. I'm very proud of that tune. I hope you start teaching it to people and bringing it to jam sessions. And I'm sure you'll have some students of mine that will want to learn that tune as well. This becomes part of jamming tradition. You're going to hear your tune someday around a campfire, and there's no feeling like that. I've had that happen once. It was a tune I hated. I can't stand it. But for some reason, people learned it, and now they're jamming on it. It's a song I wrote called I've Got Too Much Blood in My Beer Stream. But that was back during my songwriting heyday. Let's go ahead and look at Dennis's composition. And Dennis came up with something that I actually really liked, and he scored it out as well, or I think I scored that one out. Yeah, I scored that one out. Let's look at the score real quick, and let me do a screen share. It's called, how do you pronounce this? Botatort?
Botatort. No,
Botatort. Okay, Botatort. Botatort hornpipe. Look at this. This is a bona fide, four-square, street-legal, jam-ready tune now, okay? And it's got chords and everything. And it sounds like this. Let's see. And something like that. Now, that put in context with the backing track, and you can hear how it's a bona fide composition. Now, it's a little quiet, but you can hear the combination of the backing track and that delightful little melody, okay? So that's the process. We have people, for example, Dennis and Roseanne, using backing tracks to jumpstart the composing process and coming up with super legitimate melodies. It's really exciting. It's super exciting. And here's the deal I'll make you. I'll take my time, which I have so much of, and I will gladly score out your tune that you create. So here's the proposal I'd like to make all of you. I've got classes scheduled with all of you in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to send you some backing tracks as soon as we're off the phone here. And I want you to do your best to come up with any little remedial tune, no matter how simple or how Yankee Doodle Dandy sounding. Accept it and love it, give it a name, and then we're going to listen to it together at our lesson. And then if you like it enough to not crumple it up and throw it in the trash, I will write it out. There's something that's so satisfying about seeing your composition on paper in notes with a title and your name on it. It's a really cool feeling. It's a really cool feeling. So the main thing about this is keep your expectations really low. Any kind of collection of notes is a melody. It doesn't have to be your Beethoven's Fifth right now. We just want something that you can see on paper and say, look, I wrote that. It's really, really cool. Now, everything we've done today is instrumental. If I get enough interest, and we have people who are interested in lyricism and poetry and rhyming and the combination of voice and instrument, I think it might be fun to do a songwriting composing workshop, because that's a whole different animal. Here we're just talking about melodies and chords now with no lyrics. But just bear in mind, there's a whole area of composing we didn't touch on, which is songwriting, and that's fun too. So I'll query people in an email and see if we want to do a workshop on that sometime, because I love writing songs. It's a great way to get stuff off your chest and to know your friends and family and get better at the composing process. So now we're going to open up the end of the class here. By the way, thank you so much for Dennis and Roseanne for sharing your music. I am incredibly excited when people write songs, and the only thing that could make me more excited is if you folks are bringing those tunes to your friends and family and jam sessions and making people play them, because that's when they start to fly. What I suggest is let's go ahead and at our next lesson have a goal for coming up with, I don't care if it's 4 notes or 3 measures, some kind of minimal melody over one of the backing tracks that I send you, and then we'll break it down and unpack it at our next lesson. If you don't do it, no big deal. We're just going to do something else. So there's zero failure in my program. But I think you'll all surprise yourself, just like Dennis did and Roseanne did, when all of a sudden from that backing track came a delightful melody that became written down, had a name, and now is literally a tune that could be played at any jam session anywhere in the world, which is very exciting to me. That way, and then record it, and with friends and family, and it's just amazing what you can do with this stuff. So glad you all came today. It would have been quite awkward if I was the only one here for this class. And I will be uploading this to YouTube later and sending you the link. If you want to see the other classes I've done, you go to the JamAlong site and go to events, and there on the bottom of the page now. There's links to YouTube with all of these. And I hope all of you have an amazing weekend. It's going to be fun. I'm playing a couple gigs coming up, so hope the weather holds. But email me any questions you have if you feel better doing it that way. And I will see you all at your next lesson. Take lots of notes when the questions come to you so I can address them in our next session, okay?
Thank you.
Y'all have a great rest of your day. Let's talk soon.
To learn about upcoming workshops, click the events link on the JamAlong website, and they will be listed all the upcoming classes as well as past classes that you can view on YouTube.